Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Joe Massaro with Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club, and I'm so excited to have you back with us. As you know, we are a monthly book club, and I interview an author every month, so you're not just have the ability to read the book, but you also get to meet the author. And today we have Cara Putman with us, and we're so excited that Cara is with us. You have been with us before.
That's right. And that was such a fun time. Thanks for having me back.
Well, we're excited. We loved Shadowed by Grace.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a book I'm still really proud of because it ties my love of World War II with art and just story. And so it was so much fun to write.
So I highly recommend that book, by the way. Make sure you get it, Shadowed by Grace by Cara Putman. So today, what we're talking about a different book, which is one of my favorite topics.
Yay!
Deadly Secrets on Mackinac Island.
Yeah.
But before we get into this wonderful book, why don't we just talk a little bit about, you live in Indiana with me?
I do.
You're in Indiana, right? Yeah. Okay. Why don't you share a little bit about who you are? You weren't always an author, so maybe you could just give everybody a little bit of information about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've wanted to write since I was like 13 or 14, but didn't actually start until I was in my early 30s. And I have my law degree from George Mason, which when you read Flight Risk, you'll see that kind of pop and burble into the story there. But from Nebraska, went to DC right after I graduated from the University of Nebraska, go Big Red, and loved living in DC the first 8 years of my professional career. And so I worked in the nonprofit world. And then also while I was working, went to law school. And then my husband and I had our first daughter my last year of law school, just in case life wasn't quite chaotic enough.
Crazy enough.
Yeah. And then after law school, I clerked for a judge in DC. My second week on the job was 9/11. So that was definitely kind of put a stake in the experience because I was inside the White House security perimeter. So that also ties into Flight Risk a little bit. But we moved from DC to Indiana when my husband took a job at his alma mater, which is Purdue University. And I was moving to a town I'd never been to so that he could work at a university. The only reason I knew about it was because that was where he'd gotten his degree. And I was like, I can do anything for 2 years. And that was almost 20 years ago. We got here and just love it. And it's fun to kind of look back and see God's hand in things because it really was. I was set up to have a great career in DC. I was headed to Department of Justice through their honors program and just really was set up to do really well with law. But moved here because I knew immediately this was the right place for my husband. And if it was the right place for him, I believed it would be the right place for me, even though it took a while to figure out how I fit here.
Sure.
But it was because we moved here that I met Colleen Coble, and that's what launched my writing career. And now I teach full-time at Purdue University at the Cranart School of Management. I teach law and ethics and run the honors program for the business school. And then I write. And then we've got 4 children. And we just got a new puppy like 2 days ago because life's not chaotic enough. And so we feel like we have a newborn. My husband and I are doing the bleary-eyed up at, all hours of the night with the puppy. But we were like, since we're all at home now and we're all 6 of us are home through August sometime, we're like, now's a good time. If we're going to get a puppy,
it's a good time. So, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. A little bit about me.
Yeah.
I'm from New York. I was telling you before we got on.
Yeah.
And I have lived in Indiana for about 5 years, but I have a background in law. I was a paralegal there for many, many years.
Oh, okay.
And I absolutely love the law. I almost went back to school to become, that's why I'm good. I can't wait to read it and to have you back so that we can talk about it. So why Mackinac Island, I guess, is my first question.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to show the book, Deadly Secrets on Mackinac Island. Make sure you get this book, okay? It's a really great one.
So my books come 2 ways. Sometimes it'll be because of a historical event, like the World War II books. Usually there's some nugget of history that just kind of captivates me. And I'm like, I have to write about this. But with this book, it was actually the setting. My husband had a fundraisers conference up on Mackinac Island back when we had 2 little kids. So all of us went, and our 2 oldest, but they were like 4 and 1 at the time. And I were exploring the island while he was in meetings all day. And I fell in love with it because Mackinac Island is this unique little place on Upper Peninsula, Michigan. So, Michigan's like a hand, and you go all the way to the top, and it's this tiny little island with an 8-mile circumference that is just set up there. But it's kind of like going to a Vale, or what I imagine Martha's Vineyard would be like. It basically exists for tourism. There's about 400 people that live there year round, but what makes it so special is there are no cars except for an ambulance, which I learned through research for the book.
Yep.
And so it's kind of like you're stepping back in time, and it's just a different pace of life. And there's all these cute little artsy stores, the Grand Hotel, restaurants, you rent bikes and you can go around the island. And so I just loved it. And then my mind started going with, well, what kind of story could I set here? And how can I make it suspensey? And so that was really why I loved the island. We've been back several times since. One time for a book signing for Mackinac Island for the Island bookstore. And so it's a special place. And if you haven't been, I highly, highly recommend it. They do have Wi-Fi now, which that kind of wrecks the ambiance a little bit, but it really is just a special place if you can spend a couple days. It's a 10-hour drive from Lafayette. For a while, it seemed like everywhere we liked to go was 10 hours. But once you get there, you just kind of go, unless you're the heroine in the story.
Now, am I pronouncing it wrong, incorrectly?
Yeah. So it's really interesting because when I first learned of it, I would say Mackinac because I'm like, that's what it looks like. It looks like Mackinac Island, but it's actually Mackinac. And there's a little town right across the strait of whatever lake that is called Mackinac City. And so it's interesting because it's like Mackinac City and Mackinac Island.
Okay, so it's
Mackinac.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Wow, look at what you learned.
It's not spelled that way at all.
Well, you mentioned going back in time, and Somewhere in Time, which is one of my favorite movies ever. Actually, I probably have watched it 10 times over the years. I think it came out in 1980. Starring Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour. And I actually had my husband watch it with me for the very first time this year.
Oh,
and he loved it.
Yeah.
And it encouraged him that he wants to go and visit as well.
Oh, that's awesome. And it's really fun because when you go up to the island, I mean, it's known for Somewhere in Time. That kind of put it on the map in a way. So everywhere you go, and especially like at the Grand Hotel, there are all these little signs about Somewhere in Time and stuff like that. And I mean, really, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like the lake house before the lake house, kind of the flip time, really kind of fantastical element to it. But it's just really fun because when you go to the island, you'll still find lots of Somewhere in Time memorabilia.
So the lake house with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. You see, I'm a movie fan.
That's awesome.
I grew up with movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love all kinds of movies.
Yeah.
Except the horror ones, I'm not a big fan of
my
that.
mom always said, life is scary enough. Why watch a horror movie? And I went, that's wisdom. That's a lot of wisdom.
So you obviously have gone, and your book entails a great deal of what the area is like, the streets and all of that. And you talk about the stores, and so you've obviously been there and a lot, and you have researched it because you feel like you're actually there. At least I did.
Well, and that's the goal especially when I'm writing something like this. So like with Shadowed by Grace, at the time I was writing it, I hadn't been to Italy yet. So it was such a thrill when people who read it told me, wow, how many times have you been? Because I can tell you've been there because you've got the setting right. I was like, well, thank Google Earth. Now I've spent several summers there teaching. So now I can be like, okay, I know Italy, I know Tuscany. With Mackinac Island, our second trip was actually to do research. And so my husband took, at that point we had 4 kids, up to Fort Mackinac, and they're doing the whole tourist thing as I'm down at the tiny little police station talking with the police chief going, okay, so if there was a murder on this island, who would investigate it? And our second, who at that time was like 8 or something, was like, they let you out? They didn't put you in jail? And I was like, no, fortunately I wasn't the first writer who had asked him those kinds of questions.
I'm sure.
that's the kind of research I was doing, because Mackinac
Yeah.
is such a unique little community that I was like, huh. So I think it would be, they would have to send the state police in to investigate a murder, but would they really? Do they have the resources?
Mhm.
And even having been there twice, I was like, oh, I know, there won't be a traditional ambulance. It'll be horse-drawn, because everything on the island is horse-drawn. And fortunately, I called the clinic and talked to a doctor there, because she was like, oh no, one of the only mechanized vehicles they have
It's
is
an
an
ambulance.
ambulance. And so I
Okay.
went, oh, well, I'm glad I called and talked to you. And so, I mean, I really want it to be that if you've been there, it's like going back. But if you haven't, it's like getting to travel there through a book. So I think those details are important.
They definitely are. You can tell that, there's this richness about the story, like I was saying. Um, I don't want to give away a lot about the book, obviously, because I want people to read it. But the main character is Alana.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit about her.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. So Alana is, she grew up on the island. So there is a elementary school there. It's actually not too small, considering how small the population of the island is. And she went to law school, and she's left. And she's left because of something that happened while she was in high school, and doesn't come back. She's kind of cut ties, doesn't want anything else to do with the island because of all those bad memories. But because she's an attorney, she's just gotten through a really hard trial and is just kind of worn down. And then one of her parents gets sick, and so they need her to go
go
man
back.
the store and keep it going, because the tourist season is so short. It's basically from about now in May until mid-October.
Because
And so,
it's pretty cold up there.
yeah, it is, because I mean, it's way up at the top of Michigan, right up
Yeah.
against Canada, basically. And so it's really cold, which is part of what makes it nice when it's the middle of the summer and you're like, oh, 80 degrees. This is a nice balmy temperature. But that means that season is small. So that's why she has to go, even when she doesn't want to. And while she's there, she finds a family mystery, but then she also ends up solving the question from her past with some suspense woven in.
Yeah,
So,
really good suspense woven in.
I have to keep everybody guessing and on the
You
edge
do,
of
and you do it so well. Let me say, I'm there, and as I'm reading, because I'm always trying to think, okay, where is this going?
Yeah. Well, and I'm always reading. So like right now I'm reading Nancy Mail's new Kaylee Quinn book. And I'm always doing that. I'm like, okay. And the one I just finished a couple days ago, I was like, I thought it was this person, and then I backed away from it, and then I ended up being right. But the author did such a good job of getting me to go, oh, this has to be, oh, wait, no, that's too easy. There's something else going on. And then I was like, I was right. And so I love books like that. And
Yeah.
that's why I like to write them.
Yeah, I hear you. So you talk about in the book, you have these great discussion questions in the back. And so I want to just hit a couple of those, because I thought that they were really good. Other than, I don't want to give the ones away about the story.
Oh, sure.
But truth can set us free, you talk about.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to Alana. And finding that process of finding the truth sometimes is very scary.
Yeah, it is. And especially when it's tied to something in our past. And what's
Mhm.
interesting that I hadn't thought about is Flight Risk, the book that just came out. The tagline is finding truth in a fake news world. And so there's this kind of recurring theme in my writing about the importance of truth and the journey to find it. And so for Alana, it's everything she's imagined about her past is grounded in this one event from high school, and it's affected all of her decisions since then. And it's painful enough that she doesn't want to confront it, but it's only when she confronts it that then the chains from the past are just they drop. There's this freedom.
Yeah.
And it's such a biblical concept. I mean, that's what Jesus talks about.
Sure.
Is the truth will set us free. And there's a reason that theme is so powerful to us, because there's such a deep spiritual truth in that. And so it's really about her journey. Very reluctantly, she doesn't want to go there, but events force her to, so that she doesn't really have an option. She has to confront the past because it's now colliding with the present.
Yeah, I totally can associate with that in my life, believe me.
Yeah. I think
Um,
most of us can. I think
we
that's why
can.
it is such a powerful thing, because we all have that thing in our past that either it's true and it scarred us, or the way we interpreted it has
Hmm.
scarred us. And it's the thing we carry with us. And no matter, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like with me, it's this, okay, I've dropped it, I've let it go. And then a year later, I'm like, wait, how did that creep back in? And, it's this process. And so
Yes.
maybe that's why I write about it so much. It's just the knowledge that it's so important to reach that point where we can just let it go. We can embrace the truth of who we are, embrace the truth of our past, and walk into the future free.
Well, there's a topic right there, boy.
We
I
could talk forever about that
we
one.
could really talk forever on this, because I know for myself, I come from a very, difficult childhood and as an adult, and there are things, you look back at and I have said to myself, I'm not sure who that person was and why I made that decision.
Yeah. And that's just frankly, that's what Satan loves to do. He loves
Yes.
to get us so twisted into this place where the truth may be really clear to other people, but it isn't to us. And, part of that process really is having someone come alongside and say, hey, I understand this is what you feel. That's a valid
Yep.
reaction. However, that's not grounded in truth. So let's move you back to a position of knowing who you are, knowing what your identity is based on the firm rock of Christ and everything he did for us, and then move into freedom from there. And so it's this interesting balance, because you can have people who are just like, oh, get over it. That's old. That's done. Forget about it. And you're like, well, I can't forget about it until I've dealt with it. And
I am looking up something, so I normally don't do this, but I read something this morning and I want to see if I can find it real quick. Just give me a second. I
sure.
so agree with what you're saying. I think it's Colossians 3:1. Let's just see. Folks, hang on there. Just give me a minute. Yeah, if you don't mind, let me just read this, because
Yeah,
it really,
absolutely.
because I know for myself that, there's things in my own life where I have to be reminded of who I am, in Jesus, and that the things from my past, that's exactly where they are in my past. I can learn from them, I can grow from them, but they cannot hold on to me, or I cannot hold on to them anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the other thing too, as you get ready to read that, is there's this beautiful thing that happens when we allow ourselves to be healed in a healthy way,
Yes.
that the thing that it may still be a scar, it may still be present, but it becomes a point of ministry if we're willing to use it. But for that
Amen.
to happen, we have to get to a place where we're whole, where we've dealt with it. And a friend was putting it to me this way, about a week ago, going, there's a natural process to grief, but we have to choose whether we're going to stay in the graveyard
Hmm.
or whether we're going to move on. And
Yes.
I thought that was just, I knew that, but I'm like, there's a real beauty to that. In you grieve, you go to the grave site, you grieve what didn't go the way you thought it would, or the real legitimate pain that happened, but then you keep moving on. And it's as you move on, but with a knowledge of, hey, this is what happened. God can use that in you to then minister to other people in a way that he couldn't have if you weren't willing to say, yeah, I have this scar. I know what you're going through. Let me validate that, but let me show you where freedom exists.
Yeah, and I think at times, and I know this has been for myself, that you feel unworthy of, like God wants to do something in your life, and you're like, why me? And God is saying, why not you?
Yeah.
And I think of Mary Magdalene, that you don't really, her before, you don't know a lot about. I say this, obviously she was demon possessed,
Yeah. And that's about all we know.
and that's about all we know. But there's the after part of it,
Yeah.
and who was at the grave, and who was the first one to see Jesus?
Yeah, exactly. Mary Magdalene.
Yes. And so, so I've laid my past down. Yes, I will be honest, once in a while some things try to come back up.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yes. And so I have to know who I am in Christ. But let me just read this to you. It's Colossians 3:1-3. So if you're serious about living this new resurrection life with Christ, this is, sorry, the message.
Message. Yeah.
act like it.
Yeah.
Pursue the things over which God presides. Don't shuffle along, eyes to the ground, absorbed with the things right in front of you. Look up and be alert. And what is going on about Christ? That there's the action right there. See things from his perspective. Your old life is dead. Your new life, which is your real life, even though invisible to spectators, is with Christ in God. He is your life. When Christ, your real life, remember, shows up again on this earth, you'll show up too, the real you, the glorious you. Meanwhile, be content with obscurity like Christ.
Yeah. I love the way that the message puts that, because there are so many affirmative actions and things that we're supposed to do in the process of getting to that growth and that development that God has for us. Because I think sometimes we just sit there and go, okay, God, whenever you want to show up, I'm ready. And sometimes he's saying, I just need you to move your feet and take the next step. And then I'll meet you in that next step. And then there'll be the next one and the next one. But we just sit there going, all right, I'm ready to use me. And he's like, if you get off your duff, I'd love to use you.
I'd love to. Yes. He's willing.
Yeah, exactly. But we have to be willing. So
absolutely.
I love going through the Passion Translation, the Message, and NIV and comparing it, because the three of them will highlight different aspects that are all beautiful.
Yes.
And that I love just really seeing and embracing.
Well, I was blessed this morning. I think I really needed to hear that myself. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't want to forget, this is Cara's book, Deadly Secrets on Mackinac Island. Definitely get a copy of this and read it.
Thank you.
And we're going to have you come back too. So I want to make sure we show that your current book that you just came out. Flight Risk.
Yeah.
That looks really good.
It came out on April 7th, and it's one of my DC legal romantic suspense, but it's a standalone. So if nobody's read any of the others,
show them.
The Justice series. This is a great one to start with.
Okay.
There are characters from the others show up, but this one completely stands on its own. You don't need anything else to know what's going on. And the cover is just awesome.
I love the color. I like the colors in there.
Yeah, it really pops.
So for myself, and I know for other people who listen to this, some may be starting out writing, some may be in the middle, like me. I'm in the middle of writing my first children's book.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, I'm excited about it. But what kind of information can you maybe share with some people about how you started writing? I know that there's discouragement at times in writing.
Yes.
Just the fact that it's, for me, it was something totally new. I wasn't a kid who wanted to be a writer.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that I can say is, if you want to write, you need to be reading the genre you want to write. And so like children's books are beyond me because the word count is so small. I don't know how I could tell a whole story in it, and yet people do it beautifully well.
Can I show you what I'm reading?
Oh, that's perfect. Yes, Magic Tree House books are awesome. We have 40 of them upstairs. And so, reading the genre you want to write is critical. But I would also say read very broadly. So if you were to look at my Goodreads challenge for 2020 or 2019, I think I'm on book 43, 44, and 45 right now for the year. So I'm always reading, I'm always listening to books. I like listening to audiobooks because I read so fast that listening to an audiobook, even at 1.5 times, which drives my husband crazy, I'm hearing things because it's slower than I read. And so I can really pick up styles. So I like to listen to New York Times bestsellers. I like to listen to my friends who write and are winning all the Christian book awards, because it forces me to slow down and listen to how they're writing and the choices they're making. But then,
let me just say, I love that. Yeah. Because I'm a fast reader.
Yes.
And so I am going to change up how I do some things, and I am going to definitely do that.
So, and depending on your library, Hoopla is a fantastic app, which is where I get all my audiobooks. I'm still cheap. I don't want to spend $30 on an audiobook.
I have Hoopla.
Yeah. And so that's how I get all my audiobooks. Although the other trick is when you see an author's ebook on sale, like for free 99 cents, $1.99, you can often get the audiobook for $7.49. So that's how I've bought a lot of audiobooks as well, is you
Okay.
get the ebook and then it'll often pop up with, do you want to get the audiobook as well?
Okay.
And then the other thing is join an organization like ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers. So this month I'm teaching an online workshop that's free for members on the plot threads and how do you weave all the different plot threads together. And so it just started this week. We're talking about external, internal, spiritual, and romance, because a lot of Christian fiction will have those 4 threads, with or without romance that could pop off. But just talking about, some of those real key things. The last one in April was on how do you generate ideas, and it was fantastic. Elizabeth Goddard taught that one, and she writes really great books. And so that we just kind of have all kinds of different things in the conference and chapters and things like that. The other thing, though, is write. Just write every day. And so for me, because I will be getting edits on my next book on Monday, and I just turned them in like 2 weeks ago. So I've given myself kind of a 3-week break where I'm reading nonfiction. I'm trying to find new ideas and just kind of letting my brain work differently. And then once the edits are done, I'll start writing again, and it'll be to get going after having had a few weeks off. What I'll do is at least 500 words a day. And if you do 500 words a day, in the end of a year, you'll have a full-length novel. And so that's 2 pages, double-spaced, 500
awesome.
words. And so for people who are writing an adult novel or an adult book, that's a bite-sized chunk. And what you'll find is as you discipline yourself and you're doing it consistently, it gets easier. So my writing chunk when I'm on deadline is about 2,000 words, and I can usually do that in 2 hours or less. That's about a chapter. But I know, having written now 35 books, that 2,000 word chunk is kind of my writing speed. And so I can then backtrack when I have a deadline and go, okay, this is how fast I can write this book. Here's how I add in time for life. Like this time when I turned in the macro edits for Lethal Intent, Purdue was in the process of changing to all online instruction. So I actually had to ask for an extra week because this was a huge shift. I teach face-to-face. And, but I knew that if I had that extra week, then I could probably get it done. And so you just kind of get to where you have a rhythm, but it's repetition. The more you do it, the easier it's going to get. And the more you're reading, the more you'll internalize kind of storytelling. And writers that talk about the rules, but if you're reading, you don't have to think about the rules because you'll just know, wait, that doesn't sound right. That's not believable. And so if you read voraciously, I really think that's the best thing. And so reading even like the Magic Treehouse books, because that's your target market, that's a great way to kind of start going, okay, what's in these books? What makes them work? What's the word choice that they're using? And so that's a really great way.
And let me just say resources. There's some really good, let me just pull up something while I'm sitting here.
Yeah, all mine are back there on that bookshelf.
Yes.
I'd have a stack like this. Here are my go-to books.
I have the Writer's Market.
Yeah, that's a good one to get started with.
I have the Christian Writer's Market Guide, 2019.
Yeah. And those are where you're going to find who's looking for what. And so in writing magazine articles, all that kind of stuff. Awesome. Yeah, because that's your market. The children's market.
And here's one for children's books as well.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So I've been looking at this because a word that I would use is not going to be a word that someone, that's a younger child is going to use. So it's pretty interesting.
That's got to be great.
To relearn things.
Yes. Yeah, and that's, I have a child in basically every education level, college sophomore, a high school junior, a 6th grader, and then our youngest is in the 4-5 high ability classroom. So I literally have elementary through college. And so that's really helpful as I'm writing. Like I had in Flight Risk, there's a 14-year-old. I don't remember having a kid necessarily in this one, but just to be able to hear the voice and go, is that how my kid would talk, or am I making them all sound like college students? Or although our 9-year-old talks like a little adult because he's got the youngest and he's got all these older kids. And so, just kind of thinking, okay, what would be normal? And even when you're writing adult fiction, you still have to have genuine kids and young people in your books. So
absolutely. That's really great. Great information. So let me just show the cover. I piled up so many books. I have to find your book. Hold on a second.
Yeah, you've got all the right resources, though. I love seeing
I have them on the shelf that's up above my desk. All right, so the book we were talking about earlier, and we didn't want to give away too much because you wouldn't want to read the story. Deadly Secrets on Mackinac Island, as I learned how to pronounce it today. I'm so grateful for that. I'll have to tell all of my kids. I have 3 daughters and a son, and they're all movie and music crazy people like I am.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so even my son loves Somewhere in Time. So I will definitely tell them we've been pronouncing it wrong all these years. Just a quick question. So your newest book, you want to show that up again that just came out?
Flight Risk.
Flight Risk. Oh, we're going to have you back, hopefully in June sometime, and we'll talk about that, and I'll be sharing that. Why don't you tell people how they can connect with you?
Okay, so I'm pretty easy to find. It's my name, Cara Putman. And so my website is just caraputman.com. I'm on Instagram as Cara C. Putman. On Twitter is Cara_Putman. And on Facebook is Cara.Putman. So,
and if they go to your website, they'll see all that on the bottom because I saw all that.
There are all the links to all those places.
Yes.
One of the fun things I do on Pinterest is I've got boards for all my books. So you can often see the places I'm talking about or see, who I thought the inspiration for the heroine or the hero was. And so that can be fun too. Some people like that. But yeah, I'm basically everywhere.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
In the middle of, doing all the other things that you do.
Yeah. So I love it. It's fun.
Well, let me just touch base with people on what's coming up next. I don't have the book because I have it on my Kindle, but it's Nina Gaynor, The Bird and the Bees. I don't know if you won't be able to see that. Nope.
It's not wanting to focus on that.
Nope. So it's Nina Gaynor, NEENAGAYNOR, The Bird and the Bee. I'm actually interviewing her in a few days on Tuesday.
Oh, how fun.
Oh, yeah. And then, now I got to search again for the other book now. Just give me a minute. Here we go. Staying Power.
Yeah, I've heard about that one.
Yeah, it's Carol and Jean Kent and Cindy and Dave Lambert. They wrote this book, Staying Power, Building a Stronger Marriage When Life Sends Its Worst. If you know Carol Kent at all, she wrote When I Lay My Isaac Down.
Okay.
Which is an incredible story, a true story about what happened to their son. But powerful ministry that she has. I go to her Speak Up conference when I can, which is I'm not sure if it'll be a virtual one this year because I don't think it will be live.
Yeah, so much is moving online for this year. So.
Taylor University just went virtual.
Yeah.
So, yep.
And ACFW is probably going virtual because in September, in St. Louis is kind of a hot spot. So we're like, well, next year in New Orleans, and then after that, we'll be back in St. Louis.
Oh, New Orleans. I've never been there. I'd like to go.
I haven't either. So I'm like, oh, that'll be fun.
That sounds like a lot of fun. All right. Well, listen, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Thanks so much for having me.
With us. It's been a lot of fun. I've been anxiously waiting to talk to you about this book. So don't forget to get it. And I'm not going to look for it again because it's somewhere on my desk. I just keep moving books all over. But thank you. Deadly Secrets on Mackinac Island.
Yep.
And I will connect with you soon. And thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's always a joy. Thank you.
And let me just say, if you're interested in finding out more about Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club, that's our website, Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club. We have a Facebook page, Yahweh Sisterhood Book Club, FW for Fort Wayne. And we would love to hear from you. And you can join us anytime you wish. And I always am posting videos, so you'll be able to see this one as well. So thank you again, and God bless you and your family.